This episode of Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Inside the Breakthrough, a new history of science podcast full of did you know stuff.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Simms.
Welcome, everybody. This is going to be a fun, classic episode of the show. I'm really glad to have you along. It's been fun this year to take a look back at some of these interviews. These classic episodes, as you likely know by now, are from the very first year or two of the podcast. Most of them are from the very first full year of launch. And it's great to take a look back and revisit some of the cool people that we talked to. A lot of you are newer to the show, or at least haven't been here for every single one of these, 355 episodes. So I'm really happy to bring these classic episodes back out with an update. So hi, I'm your host, Stacey Simms, and my son was diagnosed with type 1 14 years ago. He is now 16. My husband lives with type 2 diabetes. I do not have diabetes. I have a background in broadcasting. That's how I came up with the podcast. And this episode is all about Jerry the Bear, a learning and companion toy for children with type 1 diabetes. You may be familiar with Jerry, and I put some pictures in the Facebook group over at Diabetes Connections, the group. But Jerry started out looking a lot different and having different functionality. You may know Jerry as part of Beyond Type 1. Now it's a program under them. They're helping with distribution and lots of other good stuff. But Jerry got his start as a college project. 10 students from Northwestern entered the very first DiabetesMine Design Challenge back in 2009, and they won the most creative design back then. A few of those students continued on and, as you'll hear, started a new company, Sproutel, that continues to this day. And in addition to Jerry the Bear, Sproutel makes My Special Aflac Duck for pediatric cancer and Purrble for finding calm. I will link both of those up at diabetes-connections.com. You can get more information and check them out. They're adorable. They're really helping kids and families who need them. And as always, episode homepage will have all the details. I did reach out to Aaron Horowitz. He is the CEO of Sproutel. He's one of the people you'll hear from in this interview, and I asked him for an update. And he says, since this time, of course, they've added quite a few things. Most recently, they've added a continuous glucose monitor to Jerry, and they put in another software update that helps kids learn about washing their hands, and I guess washing Jerry's hands too, about washing their hands more often, that sort of thing. And he indicated that there is a big update coming later this year. So I will circle back with Aaron, and hopefully we'll do another interview and get some more info on Jerry. I will let Aaron explain much more about the history of the company in that classic interview in just a moment. But first, this episode of Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Inside the Breakthrough, a new history of science podcast. And the latest episode goes in a very interesting direction, using the TV show Friends to reveal how we really feel about scientists. I'm not sure that Ross is really the best example of this, but they get it done. Marie Curie was an outsider in ways you never imagined, sort of like Ross on the show. I really do love this podcast. It's historical wisdom mixed with modern insight, with quite a few laughs along the way. Really great production value. Search for Inside the Breakthrough anywhere you listen to podcasts. And by the way, this podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. My guests in this classic interview are the CEO of Sproutel, Aaron Horowitz, and Hanna Chung, who at the time was Chief Creative Officer. Hanna left Sproutel in the middle of 2020. I reached out to her. I haven't heard back yet, so I will post an update in the show notes when I do hear from her and let you know where she is heading next. It's really fun to kind of go back in time and hear the story of Jerry, the team's appearance at the White House, and a lot more. Aaron and Hanna, welcome to Diabetes Connections. I am excited to talk to you both again.
Absolutely, as are we.
Hanna and Aaron, let's start at the beginning. Let's start with the idea. How did you come up with the idea for a stuffed animal that kids could play with and learn from?
So it actually started by talking to families of kids with type 1 diabetes. We went into the homes of a bunch of these families, and as we were playing with kids, we observed that they were taking care of their teddy bears, of their stuffed animals, as if they also had diabetes. So they were pretending to prick the paws of their teddy bears, pretending to give them insulin injections. Some kids were even actually taking little pieces of cardboard and paper and drawing insulin pumps that they would then staple to their bear's fur. So that was kind of really this light bulb moment for us of, wow, these kids are mirroring everything that's going on in their lives that they don't yet have control of. So can we bring that play experience to life, and can we do it in a way that is educational, that is comforting, but most importantly, that's really fun?
It's funny. I hadn't thought about this in a long time, Aaron, but when you bring that up, my son had an Elmo doll, Elmo from Sesame Street, and he was 23 months when he was diagnosed. And that Elmo got checked and got juice boxes, which made a mess, and got insets put on him. So it makes perfect sense that playing kind of helped these kids get through what they couldn't understand.
Absolutely. Like as kids, we role play so many things, right? We role play tea parties. We role play, dressing our animals up and making weddings for them. And for kids with conditions like diabetes, like Benny did with Elmo, to role play diabetes.
Hanna, was the idea of Sproutel always to help medically and to help with play? And then you came up with the idea for a type 1 play?
No, actually, the reason why I started Sproutel was we really wanted to work on Jerry the bear. So our mission was to really bring Jerry into the hands of all kids. And from there, we realized incorporating a company allows Aaron and I to work on this full time and, bring in awesome mentors, investors on board to help us fuel the business. And from there, just talking to a lot of families, talking to a lot of kids, we have realized that the application of play into health can be so many different, can help a lot of people, not only for kids, but also for adults and the elderly. So from there, working on Jerry the bear with type 1 diabetes really allowed us to see the potential into coming into, applying this to help all kids to be healthy and, and have a long-term vision of helping all people to use play to, help them become healthy and well. So, yeah, little Jerry type 1 diabetes really allowed us to have the vision for Sproutel.
That's great. Okay. So Jerry has changed quite a bit. There is a new Jerry right now, still loyal to that wonderful idea of learning through play. But tell me about the first Jerry. What did Jerry look like, and what did he do, Aaron?
Yeah, I'll say that there are, quote unquote, there are two first Jerrys. There's the first Jerry the bear prototype, and then there's the first bear that we shipped. And I have a real soft spot in my heart for the first Jerry the bear prototype. So I'll just touch on that for a second.
Sure.
Our first bear that we ever made was when Hanna and I were still in school. We had no idea how to, solder, how to make circuit boards, even how to sew a bear. And so we were learning everything as we went along. And what we created, I'm staring at it now in our office, is like a 2-foot, hard-chested, like behemoth of a bear with eyes that we cut out of a Purrble so that it blinked. Its head was attached to its body with metal nails. It was quite creepy looking. And we had made so many mistakes about our understanding of type 1 diabetes because at that point we didn't have kind of the intrinsic knowledge from the community. So for example, when we tested with our first user, Jerry's blood glucose level was only 2 digits. In fact, his screen was only 2 digits big. Oh. And aptly, this little boy said, I would be hypoglycemic and going to the hospital if that was my blood glucose level. We were like total face palm, We had missed the mark, but it taught us so much about, one, just the immense amount of knowledge that we had to learn so that we can then create something that actually had an impact. But it also showed us that despite the fact that Jerry was big and clunky and looked super scary, this child was still really excited by the fact that there was a bear that also had diabetes. So that's our technical for our first Jerry.
I'm looking at the timeline you recently posted on Facebook, and I'll link this up at diabetes-connections.com if it's okay. Is that the first Jerry, the one that's really big and kind of light colored all the way on the left?
It is.
He is creepy looking.
That photo, because the little girl is so cute, it makes the photo look really cute. But the bear itself, if you just take out the little kid part, it's kind of not that cute.
But it's fabulous to see where you were going. I mean, even then, this is a toy. This is a really sweet idea. And then it's changed. It was it became a little smaller and a little bit more responsive, I guess is what I'm looking for. Or at least it had 3 numbers for the blood glucose.
Absolutely, yeah. So it got a lot more responsive. The bear that we ended up shipping we had gone through 29 different iterations of prototype. And the real difference between some of our early prototypes and what we actually ended up creating and sending out to families was that the existence of a storyline. So the Jerry that kind of existed in the world for the past few years, it has this curriculum. When I say curriculum, but I mean animated storybooks. It's got 21 animated storybooks where you train Jerry for the All-Star Games, which are kind of like the Olympics, but the sports are things like climbing trees and diving with sharks. And we teach about diabetes skills because in each of these storybooks, Jerry meets up with a new friend, like Momo the monkey or George the vegetarian shark, and they teach Jerry about both a sport and a diabetes skill. So what we ended up sending out had this kind of all of these storybooks, and the way that you unlocked the storybooks was that you had to care for Jerry correctly. So there's kind of this game mechanic that's built in where children are not only caring for Jerry, who, by the way, has a blood glucose level, has fingers that you can prick to check that, foods that you could swipe over his mouth, and insulin injection spots. They're not only doing just as what they did with their stuffed animals or with their Elmos, where they're mirroring all of their care procedures, but they're doing it to unlock these storybooks, which for them are kind of the carrot and the incentive at the end of doing this. But for us, that's really the way that we can convey some of the really complex things that you need to learn.
That's really interesting. So the new iteration of Jerry, you've expanded from just type 1. As Hanna mentioned a few moments ago, you're really trying to work toward overall good health. Hanna, tell me what's new about Jerry this time.
Yeah, so the new Jerry, a couple of things. He's cuter, smarter, and with a more affordable price point. So the biggest thing that has changed is around his curriculum. So so the new Jerry, his base curriculum is around general health. So it touches social emotional development, nutrition, exercise, sleep, and mindfulness. And from there, families can customize Jerry to have a condition like type 1 diabetes or food allergies. So Jerry is more modular. And it kind of allows families to kind of customize Jerry to match their own child. So, so that we can build a world where everyone can have a Jerry, but not all Jerry's the same, which is really cool. The way the new Jerry works interaction-wise, Jerry had a belly device called a Portal. It's kind of like a window to see what's going on in Jerry's world. So using this portal, you can kind of scan Jerry's brain and different body parts like the mouth and his stomach to see what is going on inside. Similar to the first Jerry the bear, you can still feed him, you can see how he's feeling, but having the portal be detachable from the body, it kind of allows more physical movement for a child to interact with Jerry, which is really nice. New Jerry is also washable, which is a huge feedback that we have gotten from, especially for educators. If you want Jerry to be used in a hospital setting, washability is a big part. Previous Jerry was more wipeable with Clorox and things like that. Now this new Jerry is machine washable, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that is, because who would think of that? But you absolutely, if you have somebody who's using it in a healthcare setting, in an office or a hospital, or that Elmo went in the washing machine a million times because they get kind of gross. Yeah.
And then lastly, some of the looks of the Jerry has changed. So the previous Jerry was really cute, but we knew that Jerry could be the first Jerry was more geared towards kids who are younger, like 5-year-olds. Now the new Jerry, we want to help our age. The target age we are looking after is between 4 and 9, and even though that might be only a 5 years different, it's a huge difference in the kids' world and what kids can understand, what kids are interested. So what we have done is we designed a character that could be more appealing for all kids in the age range. So Jerry looks more expressive. Jerry kind of has these longer arms like a monkey arm, which I really love because he's more huggable. So all in all, from design to interaction to the modular aspect of the curriculum has been the biggest part for us in designing the new Jerry that we have.
Erin, talk to me a little bit about food allergies. There are so many health conditions, unfortunately, that affect kids. Why did you move to include allergies?
Yeah, when we look at different conditions that kind of might be able to be addressed or to be helped out with Jerry, we look at kind of two factors. One is the emotional implications, and the other is the educational implications. And so food allergies, very similar to type 1 diabetes, there can be unfortunately, a lot of stigma. For example, things like the peanut-free table. We've heard a lot of horror stories from families of isolation caused from eating at school, or children not understanding or really believing that other children have food allergies. So there's this whole kind of emotional coping component, which we really feel that Jerry kind of provides some of the biggest impact there, just because of the comfort, because of this mirrored care that they have something else that is someone else that's just like them. And then the second is the educational component. And that really boils down, for kids with food allergies, it's things like reading nutrition labels, and also very similar to diabetes, knowing how to articulate how you feel and knowing when to go and ask an adult for help. This is really kind of universal across a lot of conditions, but particularly in food allergies, there's every label or every piece of food that you put into your mouth, you're going to want to read the label, see if it has whatever your allergen might be. And there is kind of this also really interesting correlation with, an action that's tied in with mealtime. Right. So for diabetes, you might be checking your glucose level and taking insulin. For food allergies, you're doing it around mealtime. You're reading these nutrition labels. You're making sure that you're sitting in a place that's allergen free. You're making sure that the people around you don't have allergies. You need to have washed your hands to make sure that you didn't touch anything. So there's all of these just kind of procedural things that we see a real alignment in the value that we've seen Jerry provide for children with type 1 diabetes already.
And so far, how has it been? I know you've just put it out there, and you've been part of the diabetes community for a few years, where you've been very well received. How have you been received in the allergy community?
So we've certainly had parents that are incredibly excited. I'll say this, we're kind of still almost, this is a funny term, but like making a name for ourselves in the food allergy community. We haven't yet gone to a conference dressed as teddy bears, which is typically what we did at things like Children with Diabetes and the AADE.
I should stop you and say this is how I met Hanna and Aaron a few years back when they were dressed like Jerry the Bear at a conference, which was so much fun. And you definitely had to stop by and talk to them and find out what was going on. So, yeah, you need to go to a food allergy conference and do that.
Absolutely. That's kind of, I think that's how Hanna and I think about kind of putting a stake in the ground of moving into new territory. We got to don the bear suits. We got to go to a conference and maybe have a dance off with another mascot.
But have you had any feedback from parents of kids with food allergies yet?
So absolutely. So before we ever kind of decided to move into the food allergy realm, we actually interviewed, a range of families, a ton of families, and the people that we talked to were, ecstatic that we were creating something for food allergies, and actually told very, very similar stories to the families that we had originally interviewed of kids with type 1, that their children would pretend that their stuffed animals had a peanut allergy or a shellfish allergy, and they would pretend to have them go into anaphylaxis and give them an EpiPen. And so we really saw this need being presented and are excited by kind of their excitement for Jerry. And of course, Jerry's not out in the world alive and kicking yet for kids with food allergies, so we won't see kind of the rubber really hit the road until about June of 2016 when we're shipping these bears. But the excitement is really good to see.
And Hanna, Aaron talked about the modules and the storybooks to unlock the original Jerry. Is this the same idea with the food allergies as well?
Very similar. So kind of similar to type 1 diabetes, in the way we teach type 1 diabetes is around talking about your feelings, having the vocabulary, practicing the routines to help you, the daily routines you have to go through. And we also have different storybooks that touches upon social situations that you need to know to kind of apply the concepts that you have learned in the different social settings. It's the same framework, but there's more geared to the food allergies. So checking your blood sugar level and giving insulin might be around washing your hands, and also giving an EpiPen when you have the allergy reactions. Seeing how your stomach is doing and how your body parts are having, whether you have hives or not, that's similar to, seeing what is going on in Jerry's pancreas. We still teach the same vocabulary, similar vocabularies to kind of explain how you're feeling, what kind of symptoms you are having at that moment. And the same thing, storybooks around birthdays or Halloween, trick-or-treating and things like that touches upon the social, emotional situation that kids need to know.
I probably should have asked this at the beginning of our interview, but I want to make sure to bring this in. You both have a personal connection to diabetes. And Hanna, could you talk a little bit about yours? You have diabetes in your family.
Yes, I do. So both my father and my grandparents have type 2 diabetes, and they were diagnosed in their 40s and 50s, so they're late onsets. Both my grandparents passed away from the complications behind type 2 diabetes, such as heart attack and hypoglycemia shock. To be honest, I was so young at the time when my grandfather passed away, which I was in 6th grade, and I did not know anything about type 2 diabetes at that point until I saw he passed away. My dad, a year after he was diagnosed, and he decided to change his whole lifestyle to exercise more and walk 15 miles instead of taking pills to really adjust his lifestyle to be healthy. And from the process, of course, I saw him, feeling frustrated and feeling isolated when he did everything possible right, and his blood sugar level was not 90 at the end of the day. So from that, our whole family decided to change our diets too, because my dad, we had to support our dad emotionally to make sure he's getting the cheers that he needs to go power through the day. So 2 months after, my dad lost about 40 pounds. And even 14 years today, he still practices the same routine, which is really amazing.
Wow, yeah.
And from the process, not only I learned so much about type 2 diabetes, but also the importance of having the community around you who can support you and, cheer for you regardless what the outcomes were. So from there, just learned a ton about the people who are affected by this kind of chronic conditions and wanted to help kids to help support them too.
Wow, what a great story of family support that you were able to really rally around him and help out. And wow, to be still in that routine all these years later is fantastic. That's great. And Aaron, your story's a little different, but you know what it's like to get injections. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so when I was a child, I had another type of endocrine condition. It's called human growth hormone deficiency. And so basically my body wasn't producing growth hormone, at least at the typical rate. And so for a period of time in my childhood, about 5 years or so, I self-administered injections every day to grow. So definitely taught me a lot, gave me a lot of empathy for kind of any type of chronic condition. And, certainly a learning curve. I'm so inspired by kids with type 1 diabetes because they wear diabetes like a badge of honor. And for me growing up, I felt so self-conscious about this. It was something that I tried to hide from everybody. And in fact, I don't think I told anybody until I was writing our first grant application or, contributing to that for Jerry the Bear. And so I'm continuously inspired by the kids that we meet with type 1 diabetes and now with food allergies and kind of how much confidence and how empowered they are. And so I'm so excited about what we might be able to do with Jerry to enhance that even further.
You've mentioned a couple times that you were in college and you were students together when this all came up. I was in college. I didn't have any big idea like this and change the world and help families. How do you do that? Where do you 19 years old and you're sitting around one night, everybody else is playing beer pong and you're like, oh, we're going to make this huge thing. How did that happen? What were you both majoring in and how did the idea come about at that time?
So I'll say it started very, very small. Hanna actually co-founded a nonprofit organization called Design for America, which is all about using design thinking to solve problems in your local community that have some type of a social impact with the potential to scale beyond. So lots of boxes to check, but really, really exciting organization, and it's totally extracurricular. So there are teams, kind of interdisciplinary teams that are formed that go out in your free time after classes to go try to solve problems, everything from, sanitation inside of a homeless shelter to things like type 1 diabetes education for kids. And Hanna and I kind of rallied around this problem while we were in school and kind of through this extracurricular these activities, we slowly but surely pursued Jerry. And at first we never had these grand intentions of starting a company, right? This was a passion project. It was, let's make one prototype and see what happens. And then it was like, well, maybe we should make a second one. And that second one looks kind of cool. And it reached a point at prototype number 3 when it was like, well, all of our time is kind of going into making these bears, and these just classes aren't quite as interesting anymore. Why don't we start to make these bears full time? And so it really, was something that was just a passion of ours that spiraled out of control and into awesomeness.
That's great. Hanna, sound right to you? But you both did graduate, right? You didn't just dump the school and go off to do the bears.
We did graduate. We did we physically left the school a bit early. So Aaron and I both graduated into spring of 2012, and the last quarter, we moved to Providence. We went to school in Northwestern in Chicago, so we were taking our classes over Skype, being in Providence, working at the Bears full time. So that was a pretty awesome journey to do that. But it was cool because we were very transparent about how we were building Jerry and the type of mentors we were working with. So the school was very supportive to let us continue Jerry in a really unique method that not other students were doing. So I think having that support was really great. And they did mention that we have to, by letting us going through this route, we have to come back to graduation in person to get our diploma, which was not a bad deal at all. So we have done that. But yeah, to your question about what we have studied, I studied mechanical engineering with the emphasis on human-centered design, but I was a very weird engineer where I was not too excited about bolts and nuts. I loved illustrating and animation. So in mechanical engineering, we do a lot of like computer-aided design, and for me, that was just illustrating in 3D for a product, which is super fun. And I also have done some research around how to build products that is emotionally appealing for kids. So I was part of the research group for a little bit while I was a student. So I was a very soft-hearted, more, I love people type of engineer in the group. So,
Aaron,
Aaron has a cooler major than I do. So we were both studying mechanical engineering, and then in our senior year, through working on Jerry, like Aaron really got excited about robotics, and he found that that's the area that he's really passionate about. So he ended up making up his own major called mechatronics and user interaction design, which really helps people how to play with robots and creating different robots that is really engaging with people. So that's a major that Aaron created. So that's our backgrounds in what we have studied so far.
Wow, this story just gets cooler and cooler. And then in 2015, this year, you guys went to the White House. How did that happen? Aaron, tell me about meeting President Obama and he's holding Jerry the bear.
Oh man, yeah. I think not in my wildest dreams did I ever think that was going to happen.
Same here.
So we had gotten a very mysterious email that they were putting together an event at the White House to honor. It was called the first ever White House Demo Day, and it was to honor entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds, mainly companies founded by either women or people of color. And so the first step was a phone interview, and I was super nervous, and I was actually at the time on a bus, a mega bus from New York to Providence, and so whispering into the phone, I delivered our little pitch and hung up and just like face palmed once again because I was like, oh man, like that was probably the worst pitch I ever gave. I was like whispering on a mega bus, and about maybe a week before the event, we were told that we were selected, and so Hanna and I are dancing around the office. We're so excited. And just a few days before the event, we got a call from an unknown number, and the voice on the other end was somebody that was putting together the event. And they said, "Hey, we had this crazy idea. Can you program Jerry the bear?" And we were like, "Yeah, that's what we do." And they're like, "Can you make Jerry wish President Obama a happy birthday?" And we looked at each other. We were like, "Yes, like." We can do it, America.
We have not talked about it as a team. We're just a yes that we had to say yes to, and we'll figure out the rest afterwards.
And so they said they couldn't guarantee anything would happen. We put together. Hanna made an awesome little animation of President Obama dancing with Jerry. We had two different voice recordings. One is Jerry wishing the president just happy birthday. The other was Marilyn Monroe singing "Happy Birthday, Mr. President."
Oh my gosh.
We sent those to the communications team, and they totally nixed Marilyn Monroe. And so the day comes, and we go to the White House, and there were about 32 companies. We weren't sure, up until a few minutes before, that we would actually get to meet the president. But luckily, there were, I believe, 6 companies that of the 32 that got to meet him, and we were one of them, and we were just ecstatic. We were like looking at each other, and they're sending up aides to us that are saying, "Okay, give us your pitch." Like they're making sure that it sounded good and that we weren't going to say anything because it was all televised. We weren't going to say anything that was politically incorrect. And to be honest, I'll give my perspective on the actual meeting, and then I'll let Hanna share hers. Everything went by in like just such a surreal blur. And I think actually the most memorable thing for me was, we kind of split up our presentation into, I introduced what we were doing. Hanna carried on and talked about the impact and gave a demo of Jerry. And President Obama was standing in the middle of us. And so after I kind of finished talking to him, he was interacting with Jerry. And so his back was turned to me. And all I kept thinking is, how close is too close to stand to the president? And so I was just like, I was trying to lean in, and I was the entire time, I was like the thought going through my mind of like, oh man, how close is too close?
Someone's going to come tackle you.
Exactly.
And Hanna, what was your perspective?
I think for me, I remember kind of going along with Aaron's point, up until we got the confirmation that we were meeting the president, we never really gotten the confirmation that we were meeting the president. It was more of like a higher chance to meet the president. So an hour before when we were pitching, I realized, I never gave a pitch to a president, and Aaron and I have not practiced anything about this pitch. So it was either going to go really authentically well or we don't. But I realized because I was holding Jerry, I felt less stressed because I was holding a teddy bear in public, and Jerry was kind of absorbing all of my nervousness from my belly to, Jerry's comforting companion. So I felt less nervous because I was holding a teddy bear. But even the demo was really cool. I was like, part of me was, speaking really well, explaining Jerry the bear, but also just making sure that the prototype demo goes really, really well and there's no mistakes. But yeah, overall, it's similar to Aaron. Everything went by so quickly, and afterwards, it took me a couple of hours to really realize, oh yeah, like, we just met the president, and he really he was impressed with Jerry the bear. Like that really happened. So it took me like a good 6 hours to really digest that. Oh, that event really happened.
Did he wind up? Did Jerry the bear sing? Did you get him to sing the song?
He did, and the president really he was laughing. He was laughing, and he really liked it. But the aftermath is really cool though. So, after the event, all these articles from a lot of different press channels are coming out, and they actually used our photo with the president and with Jerry as a main photo for almost all of the articles. So from there, we had a huge exposure about Jerry the bear, and that was really helpful for us because not only, we got to represent our company as one of the startup companies pushing the diversity in tech force, but also built a lot of awareness about kids' health and what Jerry does in the community. So it was a very awesome event.
That's amazing. And I do love the picture, and we'll link that up as well so you can see it at diabetes-connections.com. Hey, before I let you both go, I have to point out, we did meet a couple of years ago at Friends for Life when you guys were dressed up like the Bears. But it turns out Aaron and I have a crazy connection. We both went to the same high school. Different years, as you heard him say, he graduated at college in 2012. You both said?
Yeah, we both had the same teacher.
Yeah, we have the same favorite teacher from high school, our social studies teacher, Mr. Fagel. How crazy is that, Aaron?
Oh my gosh, it is wild. I remember the fondest memory I have of Mr. Fagel is that he would wear a different sweater to class every day of the year. That's so many sweaters.
I know. And we grew up in New York, so he needed the sweaters. It was cold. But he was, such a great teacher. And I took his AP history class. Is that what you took? That's
exactly what I took. And it was one of my favorites. My sister took it, and that was the thing that she said was, you got to take Mr. Fagel's history class. I was like, okay, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I knew it was going to be good.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining me today, for talking about Jerry the Bear. Is there anything else that you wanted to make sure to mention before I let you go?
We're so thrilled to have had for the past couple of years just the immense support of the diabetes community and the diabetes online community. It's really alarming. Not alarming. It's comforting. It's awesome to feel so welcomed as outsiders coming in so quickly. And I don't know if I can relate a similar experience any other time in my life. The first time we went to Friends for Life, it was literally like we gained a new family. And so I think we're both so incredibly grateful for that, and so excited to kind of keep all of those relationships as we enter this next chapter of Jerry's life.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me, Hanna and Aaron. I appreciate it, and I can't wait to see what's next. Thanks.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Simms.
More info on Jerry and Sproutel and what's next for all of them at diabetes-connections.com. I will link up some articles that take a look back and others that do take a look forward, because as I mentioned, Sproutel has several other projects that they have been successful. And it's really remarkable when you think about the start that these guys got when they were, I can't call them kids anymore, when they were in college and launching something like this. And now to have it not only succeed with one product, but others, and really rolling along. It's a remarkable story, and I'm really excited that I got to meet them in those bear suits way back when. All right, our next episode coming out on Tuesday of next week. I am scheduled to talk to Tidepool. Very excited to get back on the technology news. We are doing a deep dive into technology all this year on the show, and Tidepool has submitted Loop to the FDA. So will this be the first do-it-yourself rooted initiative to get FDA approval in the United States? We'll talk about it, and that episode is coming up on Tuesday. Thanks, as always, to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Simms. I will see you back here on Tuesday. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Simms Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.